The MCU multiverse isn't chaos, it's choreography. 34 timelines, 50 plus variants, a dozen incursions that look less like accidents and more like policy. And buried under that noise is the uncomfortable truth. The sacred timeline was never sacred. It was scripted, trimmed, forced to look inevitable. The heroes we've followed for 15 years, variants. Every single one, not copies, not knockoffs. Branch true originals with their own math for right and wrong. Here's where the floor drops. What broke the dam wasn't a single dagger in a citadel or a sorcerer drawing circles. The multiverse didn't begin. It revealed itself. It was always there, muffled, pruned, anesthetized, until one choice shattered the model. Look back and you can feel it. Outcomes that just happened to line up. Coincidences stacked so perfectly, they stop being coincidence. That isn't random. That's someone's design. So today, canon beside conspiracy, receipts beside theory. We're going to expose the lie of the sacred timeline, explode the truth about variants and anchor beings, turn incursions into plain English, reframe the Kang problem, decode why the Fantastic Four are a Rosetta Stone, not a cameo, and walk straight into Secret Wars. Not as a tournament, as a prevention plan. Because the endgame might not be about winning a fight, it might be about erasing the one person holding everything together. Too dramatic? Good. That's where Marvel loves to start. Let's rip the bandage. The sacred timeline wasn't a line. It was a loop, a maze with one exit. A story that kept choosing itself. The Ancient One hands over the time stone because this is how it must be. Dormammu yields to an impossible bargain. Thanos waits years to collect the stones with his own hands instead of, be honest, any smarter method. Coincidence stacked on coincidence until coincidence becomes policy. He who remains didn't defend free will. He fenced it. He trimmed branches like a gardener trims vines, shaped the growth, hide the clippings. The TVA wasn't saving reality. It was forcing one reality to look inevitable. And then Sylvie did the one thing no algorithm survives. She made a choice outside the model. One blade, one heartbeat, and the illusion cracked. When the loom blossoms into 1,000 threads, it isn't creating worlds, it's reconnecting the ones we were trained not to see. That's why everything after feels familiar and shocking at the same time. The Raimi Spider-Verse doesn't intrude, it re-emerges. Fox's X-World isn't a guest, it's a neighbor behind a wall someone else built. Sony's outliers, venomous, messy, loud, aren't invaders. They're tenants of a building the TVA condemned. When the walls come down, you don't get silence, you get noise. And beneath the noise, the same heartbeat. Every reality fights to stay itself, which drops us into the second punch, the variant explosion. If all worlds always existed, then every hero you love is technically a variant. That's the gut check. Holland's Peter is a Peter because Toby's Peter is a Peter because Andrew's Peter is a Peter. Not mirrors, but rhymes. RDJ's Tony is a Tony in a branch where he staggers out of a cave with fire in his eyes, while somewhere else, he never does. Thor, who grows up. Thor, who never learns. Strange, who plays God. Strange, who pays for it. Not copies, possibilities. But universes don't stabilize just because people are good. They stabilize because certain people exist. Anchors, individuals whose survival, death, or transformation dictates whether a world holds its shape or unravels. You've seen it. When a specific man in a specific world dies, the edges rot, colors wash out, rules go soft. The TVA doesn't panic because they hate that place. They panic because the scaffolding just snapped. Pull an anchor long enough and the whole building leans, creaks, collapses into something else or into nothing. So who anchors our continuity? Who keeps Universe 616 from fraying into a museum of shattered maybes? People say Spider-Man because he's our moral metronome. Others say Captain America because he's the spine. Some whisper Strange because he stands at the crossroads. Strong guesses, but look at the throne made of living timelines. Look at the man who chose to sit on it. Loki, the god of stories, literally cradling branches so they don't strangle each other. If he lets go, if he blinks, reality slips. Not because he's the strongest, but because he's the hinge. And hinges don't get applause, they get pressure. Now the grenade, Incursions. Two universes trying to occupy the same coordinates. Two Earths, one cosmic chair. The rules are cruel and simple. One gets pushed off or both shatter. You've felt the tremors. Dream walking, not a party trick. An earthquake line. Dimensional punching, not a cute portal. A rip that never closes clean. A grieving witch scouring worlds for children that belong to someone else. Not just pain, pressure with teeth. Incursions don't always look like explosions. They look like confusion. Streetlights that flicker in the wrong rhythm. A sky a shade too purple. A headline insisting something happened yesterday that happened years ago. You feel unmoored because the universe is arguing with itself in public. And when a hero crosses a rift to help, they aren't just visiting, they're pushing their world's elbow onto the table, sharing space, breathing the same air. Do it enough and you aren't collaborating. You're overlapping. Follow the breadcrumbs. A door sealed at the cost of a person lost. A world that shouldn't remember suddenly remembering. A reality that rots until someone becomes its anchor. And even then, it wobbles. These are not cameos. They're case studies, and they point one way, toward a place built from pieces of dead worlds, stitched together by will and terror. Battleworld. Not a playground. Not an arena. A tomb pretending to be a stadium. So, what about Kang? Let's not flinch. Marvel adjusted headlines, but they didn't abandon the spine. Quantumania already showed the skeleton. A council of Kangs terrified not of heroes, but of something bigger. If you command time and you're afraid, you aren't afraid of men. You're afraid of appetite. Remember the storm that eats timelines like snacks? Alioth isn't the boss. Alioth is a symptom, a tool you deploy when the disease spreads faster than you can cut. If your cure is a monster, your problem isn't a man in a purple suit. It's a cosmic principle in a bad mood. Cue the only entity that fits the math, the Beyonder. A being that treats universes like chess pieces and has the nerve to be bored by it. In the comics, he builds a patchwork planet and says fight, because he wants to watch. In live action, that motive needs protein. So imagine a different flavor. Not a spectator god, a curator. A being who thinks the multiverse is sick and must be edited into a single, stable story. He believes he's saving reality by pruning it to the bone. Now read that alongside a rumor with teeth. If Dr. Doom emerges as the face of the plan, and if the face beneath the mask belongs to a man we once called Tony Stark, what happens to your stomach? You remember the cave, the shrapnel, the suit, the vow to build a world that doesn't need saving. Now picture a Tony who watched after universe collapse despite his sacrifice. What does a man like that do when he can't accept loss anymore? He becomes the villain he needs to be, to end loss for everyone else. Doom Tony doesn't want to rule. He wants to stabilize. By force, if necessary. He'll build a machine to herd universes into a single pen. He'll deliberately ignite incursions to weld edges while the metal's hot. He'll make a patchwork and call it mercy. From the outside, he's a tyrant. From the inside, he's a surgeon with a dull knife and no time. He looks at chaos and says, cut. Where do the Fantastic Four fit? Front and center. They're not nostalgia, they're a blueprint. A team born in a 1960s frame is not an accident. It's a signal. We're peeking at the origin template, the draft He Who Remains used to model what sacred looks like. Reed isn't just smart. He's the one arrogant enough to argue with cosmic rules, and right often enough to be dangerous. Sue isn't just invisible, she's the conscience you can't see until you violate it. Johnny burns because youth does. Ben breaks because love sometimes turns you into stone and asks you to walk anyway. And then there's Franklin. Not a cute cameo. A living editorial note that can rewrite continuity without permission. If Doom wants to reboot the multiverse into one clean timeline, Franklin is the battery. Reed is the engineer. Sue is the line he cannot cross. The four aren't a cameo. They're the moral geometry of the reboot: mind, heart, heat, weight. Picture the conversation. Doom, mask on, eyes like winter, says, "Help me reset the board." Reed calculates. Sue evaluates. Johnny paces. Ben asks the only question that matters. At what cost? Doom's answer is efficient, honest, and terrifying. Everything that doesn't fit. That sentence should chill you. It's not mustache-twirling evil. It's evil with a mission statement. This is where Secret Wars stops being optional. But don't expect a panel-perfect replay with a god in white and capes in a pit. Expect a chase to stop the creation of Battleworld, not to survive it. Because once a patchwork exists, you've already lost something you can't get back. If you save the best parts of every reality, you've admitted you murdered the rest. That isn't a victory lap. That's a eulogy wearing fireworks. The Avengers will come because they always do. The X-Men will arrive because they were always here, fenced off by someone else's fear. The Fantastic Four will stand where science meets faith. The Guardians will joke so they don't cry. Spider-Man will try to hug a world that doesn't want to be hugged. Strange will mutter that the bill is due again. But incursions don't end because you punch a god. They end because someone closes the door from the other side. Not death, erasure. Imagine choosing to remove your thread from the loom so the weave stops tangling. Who can make that choice and have it mean something? Who stands exactly where power and symbolism meet, where myth becomes mechanism? Loki. He didn't just change, he became the change. He sits at the only desk that matters, the one made of living time. He's the hinge the door swings on. He can rewrite the rules because he surrendered the right to be a character inside them. That's why his arc doesn't feel like redemption. It feels like ascension, with handcuffs. He saved the story by stepping out of it, so the rest of us could stay in it. So here's the terrible, beautiful logic. To save the multiverse, someone has to kill the idea of multiverse, at least long enough to stop the bleed. Not forever, not as a tyrant's dream, as a sacrifice. Collapse the branches, protect the tree. That isn't anti-Marvel. That's the most Marvel move possible. It's choosing one future over infinite maybes, because infinite maybes have started eating people. Zoom out. The multiverse isn't just fan service, it's a thesis about choice and cost. Every branch is a decision that refused to die. Every variant is a person who won't be a footnote. It's inspiring, until it isn't. Because if everything is allowed, nothing is stable. If no decision is final, no promise means anything. That's not freedom. That's drift. Superhero stories love the impossible save. This saga says something braver. You can't keep every timeline, rescue every version, rewrite every tragedy. Being a hero isn't hoarding happy endings, it's choosing which future survives, bearing the grief of what doesn't, and moving forward without lying about it. That hurts. That's why it matters. Now, about the man in the iron mask. If Doom wears a face, we know. If the eyes behind the steel are the eyes that once looked at a kid from Queens and called him kid, are you ready to hate him and still understand him? Would you accept a villain trying, honestly, to save everyone by saving less? Would you forgive the method if the outcome holds? Or is that the line you will not cross? And if Loki is the one who must erase himself, not die, erase, to lock the weave, can you accept a universe that forgets he ever existed? Would you call that cruelty? Or the most Loki ending imaginable? The trickster who finally pulls off the greatest trick of all, making the story work without him? Let's get practical. Yet what should you watch for next? Tiny continuity shimmers that signal overlap, characters who remember what they shouldn't, maps that redraw between shots, tech that behaves like it knows it came from somewhere else, casual lines about anchors and fixed points, word choices around resets, consolidate, stabilize, harmonize. That isn't hero talk, that's curator talk, that's Doom talk, that's beyonder logic in a lab coat. Also, tone. When characters stop arguing about right and wrong and start arguing about necessary and sufficient, you're no longer in a revenge plot. You're in a preservation war. Necessary means we must. Sufficient means this will do. A hero measures both and chooses pain. A villain fixes only the outcome and calls it peace. That's where lines blur. And where great storytelling lives, too dark, breathe. Marvel doesn't end on nihilism, it ends on earned hope. The point of closing the door isn't to lock it forever, it's to fix the hinges so it can open again without tearing the house down. Maybe that's the promise, not a permanent culling. A pause, a reset, a chance to build a world where choice matters because we agree to keep choices finite. At least for a while. So, who sacrifices? Who becomes the hinge and then vanishes so the door stops screaming? The answer feels unavoidable. Loki sits where no one else can sit. He can let go and end the wobble. He can accept disappearance in exchange for coherence. It's devastating. It's perfect. It's mythic in the oldest sense. Order from chaos, paid for in silence. And what happens to Doom if he's Tony? If he did all this to save everyone? Then redemption can't be a hug. Redemption is facing what he broke while trying to fix. Maybe he lives with it. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe the mask is the punishment. Maybe the man beneath finally takes it off. And it isn't forgiveness he wants. It's permission to stop. Here's where we land. 34 timelines, 50 plus variants, a dozen incursions. One impossible choice that turns a multiverse of noise into a story you can stand inside without falling over. Not because possibility is bad, because possibility without boundaries is a storm that never ends. Heroes don't chase storms forever. They build shelters, and then teach people how to live in them. But listen, this isn't a sermon, it's a countdown. If anchors exist, someone will test the theory. If Doom believes in stabilization over freedom, someone will try to prove him wrong without letting everything collapse. If the Beyonder wants a curator's cut, someone will fight for the director's cut. Messy, human, alive. That's the war underneath the war. Control versus meaning. So, are we actually ready for the only ending that makes sense? A world where the multiverse quiets, just enough to let a single story breathe, because one god of stories decides to stop being a character at all. That isn't defeat. That's design. That's the moment possibility stops screaming and starts singing. Your turn. Which thread hit hardest? Do you buy anchor beings or do universes stand on their own? If Doom is Tony, is that a betrayal? Or the only move left for a man who can't bear another funeral? If Loki erases himself, not his life, his existence, is that cruelty? Or the truest act of love a god of stories could make? Tell me the exact scene where the pattern snapped into focus. The moment you whispered, "Oh, this was the plan all along." Drop your take. I'm reading every comment. If this reframed the MCU for you, subscribe, because the next wave of clues isn't months away. It's already here. And the endgame, it isn't coming. It's arrived. Because the multiverse was never the point, meaning was. And meaning only survives when someone finally chooses. Now, are you ready to choose?